As we mentioned before, there is no common agreement among management thinkers about the definition of management. Various thinkers articulated various definitions of management. Respectively, there is now a common consensus about the functions of management. This lecture will highlight the main functions of management based on the purpose of our course. There is enough disagreement, no common consensus. There is enough disagreement among management writers on the classification of managerial functions or functions of management. Each writer or management scientist gives his approach of the function of management according to his definition to the management. So there is enough disagreement among management writers on the classification of managerial functions. Newman, for example, and Summer recognized only 4 functions of management, namely organizing, planning, leading, and controlling. Their list of functions based on their definition of management. So Newman and Summer recognize only 4 functions: organizing, planning, leading, and controlling. Henry Foyle, or Mr. 14 Principles of Management, identifies 5 functions of management, viz. Planning, organizing, commanding. I think by commanding he meant directing, of course, coordinating and controlling. Luther Gulick states 7 such functions, and there is a catch where was called, where let us break down this catch. Bost's-Call, where P stands for planning, O stands for organizing, S for staffing, D for directing, CO for coordinating, R for reporting, and G and B for budgeting. Warren Hall and Joseph Massey classify management functions into decision making. This is very sharp. Organizing, staffing, planning, controlling, communicating, and directing. Kuntz and O'Donnell divide these functions into planning, organizing, staffing, and controlling. For the purpose of our course, we shall stress on the following 6 as the functions of management. Functions of management, functions of a manager: planning, organizing, directing, coordinating, and controlling. As you see, there is common functions among the management scientists. Common functions like planning, organizing, controlling, coordinating, and staffing. Planning. To plan is the first stage in the process of management. Planning is the most fundamental and the most pervasive of all management functions. The key function of management planning. Usually planning is described as the fundamental function of management. If people working in groups have to perform effectively, they should know in advance what is to be done. To plan for future. What is to be done? How to plan for future. So, what is to be done and when it is to be done. What and when is to be done. So, planning is concerned with the following questions, the fundamental questions of planning. What to be done, how to be done, and when to be done. So, we can consider them as the fundamental questions of planning. What is to be done, when it is to be done, and how. It's about performance, of course. It is deciding in the present about the future objectives. It is deciding in the present now how to be the future of objective and the courses of action for their achievement. Plan today to get the harvest in the future, to get the result in the future. Accordingly, planning involves the following sub-functions. Determination of long and short range objectives. How to determine in the short and long run the objectives and goals of the organization. The determination of long and short run objectives. Development of strategies and courses of actions to be followed for the achievement of those objectives. So development to formulate the strategies and courses of action to be followed in order to achieve the objectives of organization. Formulation of policies, procedures, and rules for the implementation of strategies and plans. So, the summary of this slide is the description of planning simply is the most fundamental functions of management. The main questions of planning is what is to be done and how to be done and when to be done. It is deciding now. Deciding decisions about the future currently. To design for future now. The subfunctions of management of course planning has a function, it has own sub-functions. Determination of long and short run objectives. Of course, each company or organization divides its objectives as long run objectives or short run objectives. according to their strategy, inputs, outcomes, and outputs. To develop the strategies and courses of action. Why? Why company need to develop strategies and courses of action? To achieve the above mentioned objectives. The above mentioned objectives. Formulation, this is the main. Formulation of policies. Later on we will know that these functions belong to top managers, administrators. Usually the function of administration is to formulate policies, procedures, and rules for the implementation by who? By managers, by the middle level of management. Middle level of management. We know there are 3 levels of managers or management. Top level of management, middle level of management, and lower level of management. So the policies, the formulation of policies, procedures, rule, etc., the functions of administration, administrators. As we mentioned in the previous slide, the organizational objectives are formulated by the top managers. The organizational objectives are set by top management, administration, administrators. They do that based on various factors. For long range as well as short range. Various factors. Including economical, managerial, environmental, governmental. So a wide spectrum of factors which affect the achievement of the objectives of the organization. The objectives are divided into approximately 4 or 5 objectives. You are talking about divisional objectives, departmental objectives, sectional and individual objectives. The plans may be in the mind of their managers rather than explicitly. Implicitly, not explicitly, and precisely spelt out. They may be fuzzy, so random, like that, rather than clear, but they are always there. So the plans may be in the form of explicit or implicit ideas. So we need to take out these implicit ideas. Planning is thus the most basic function of management. It is performed in all kinds of organization by all managers at all levels of hierarchy. Each plan should be scientific, measurable, accurate, realistic, and timing. Abbreviationally, each plan must be SMART, where S stands for scientific or specific in some literature. S for scientific or specific, M measurable, A accurate, adequate, R realistic, T timing. This is the description of the best plan. How to describe the best plan? The plan should be specific or scientific, should be measurable, accurate, realistic, and timing. Long run plan, short run plan. So that's why slide summarized or stated that planning is thus the most basic function of management. The most basic function, fundamental function of management. The second function also is very significant and very considerable. Organizing. Organizing involves identification of activities required for the achievement of enterprise objectives and implementation of plans grouping of activity in jobs, assignment of these jobs and activities to departments and individual, delegation of responsibility and authority for performance, provision for vertical and horizontal coordination of activities. Very huge, very wide functions. In the sequence, organizing occupies the second step in the process of management functions. So, organizing involves the following sub-functions: identification of activities. First, we need to formulate our objectives. And then, as we mentioned before, the formulation objectives is a sub-function of planning. So, the first step is to formulate objectives by top management. The responsibility of the implementation of plans goes to the function of organizing. So, the achievement of objectives depends on organizing function. So, identify the activities required for what? Required for the implementation of plans and achievement of objectives, which is formulated before a priori. Now, secondly, grouping the activities so as to create self-contained jobs. So, grouping the activities according to the entities of the organization. This for the next function, the function of human resources, staffing, recruitment. No, grouping the activities, financial activities, marketing activities, production activities, etc. So how many employees is needed for a certain activity? Assignment of job to employees to determine which jobs and who the employees. Delegation of authority so as to enable them to perform their jobs and to command the resources needed to their performance. Establishment of a network of coordinating relationship. So the main sub-function of organizing is very important. It's about identification of activities required for the achievement of enterprise objectives and implementation of plans. This is the main sub-function of organizing. It is about what? It's about activities. Because the importance of the function of organizing determines the functions of the following functions, like staffing, directing, and controlling. So the design of the function of staffing, for example, depends on the design of the organizing function. To determine the jobs and employees, we need firstly to identify the activities required for the mentioned objectives and plans. Identification of activities, grouping the activities, assignment of jobs, delegation of authority, and establishment of network of coordinating relationship. Now, we mentioned two functions: planning or organizing. Organizing process, of course, organizing, it is not an event, it is a process of various activities as mentioned before. Organizing process result in a structure of organization. or affects on the structure of the organization. So the structure of organization, or let us say the organizational chart, is depending upon organizing process. So activities, for example, versus department. Activity versus divisional or division. Activity versus individual. So the classification of activities result in a structure of the organization. So the entities of the organization, or the formulation of the entities of organization, is resulting from the process of organizing or organizing process. It comprises organizational position, accompanying tasks and responsibilities, and a network of roles and authority responsibility relationship. If we return back to the sub-function of organization or organizing, we can easily understand what do we mean by organizational positions, accompanying tasks, responsibilities, and authority responsibility relationship, the interrelationship. Organizing is thus respectively, according to the above mentioned functions or sub-function, organizing is thus the basic process of combining and integrating human, physical, and financial resources in productive interrelationship for the achievement of enterprises or enterprise objectives. This is a syrup. Actually, this is the harvest. Organizing is thus. What do you mean by thus? Is thus. Is thus in this manner means according to the above mentioned of sub functions. Organizing is thus the basic process of what? Of integration and combination of what? of various inputs, various factors, like what? Like human factors, fiscal factors, financial factors. Actually, we are talking about economic and non-economic resources. Human, fiscal, and financial resources. So, the responsibility of organizing as a function of management is to combine and to integrate human, fiscal, and financial resources, in which case, in which manner, in productive interrelationships between human, fiscal, and financial resources, in order to achieve the objectives of enterprise. What is the aim of organizing? It aims at what? At combining employees and interrelated tasks in an orderly manner, so that organizational work is performed in coordinated manner, and all effort and activities pulled together in the direction of organizational goals. See, it aims at what? Combining employees to do what? The integration of interrelated tasks in order manner. Hierarchy. The hierarchy. Top manager delivers to middle manager. The pyramid. From top management to middle management to lower management. Interrelationship between these three levels. The coordination between their responsibilities in order to achieve the goals of organization. Objectives and to implement the plan set by the top management. The third function is staffing. Human resources, recruitment, assignment of employees. Staffing is a continuous and vital function of management. It is a biological function of management. Let's see. The gradual importance of designing functions of management. Notice, please remark, planning about formulation of objectives, organizing is about the identification required to implement the above mentioned objectives, including human resources. Staffing as the third function is the vital function of management. So, after the objectives have been determined, strategies, policies, programs, procedures, and rules formulated for the achievement, activities for the implementation of strategies, policies, programs. So, what do we need? We need human resources. Staffing. So, staffing is a continuous and vital function of management. So, after the objectives have been determined, policies and plans have been formulated, activities have been identified and grouped into jobs. The next logical step in the management process is to procure suitable personnel for manning the jobs. That's why I talked about what? About the logical building of functions of management. Planning, organizing. The next, as mentioned, the next logical step is to find human resources. Suitable personnel for manning the jobs. Why is this question? Right person for the right job. Right person for the right job. Here we are talking about the efficiency and effectiveness. Since the efficiency and effectiveness of an organization significantly depends on the quality of its personnel, which in brackets right person to right job. How to assign the right person to the right job. So, since the efficiency and the effectiveness, later on please distinguish between efficiency and effectiveness. Efficiency about how optimally allocate your scarce resources. Effectiveness about the output, the relation between planned and actual outputs. So, since the efficiency and effectiveness of an organization significantly depends on the quality of its personnel, and since it is one of the primary functions of management to achieve qualified and trained people to fill various positions, staffing has been recognized as a distinct function of management. Distinct function of management. Very significant function of management. At the previous, as all functions of management, staffing also comprises several sub-functions. It comprises several sub-functions. But here I would like to make a stress on the logical building of the management functions. Please put into account the importance and the efficiency and effectiveness of the function of organizing depends on the effectiveness and efficiency of the function of planning. The effectiveness and the efficiency of the function of staffing respectively depends on the efficiency and the effectiveness of the function of organizing. Here we are talking about the correlated efficiency and effectiveness. The interrelationship between the efficiency and effectiveness of the three mentioned functions. Let us see the several sub-functions of staffing. Also it comprises sub-functions like organizing and planning. Sub-functions of staffing. This is about human resources, of course. Manpower planning involving determination of the number and the kind of personnel required. Activities, departments, personnel. The assignment of employees. So manpower planning involving determination of what the number and the kind of personnel. Professionalism and specialties. Recruitment for attracting adequate number of potential employees to seek jobs in the enterprise. Selection of the most suitable persons for the jobs under consideration. This is about the right person, suitable person to suitable job. Placement and induction and orientation. Placement, induction and orientation. Transfers, promotion, termination, to fire and lay off. Training and development of employees. Training and development of employees. So, summarizedly speaking, the sum function of staffing involve the determination of required personnel, the recruitment and attraction, so selection is the main process. Selection of the most suitable person for the job under consideration. The modern methods of selection is depending upon the online advertisement. Placement and orientation. I mean, is promotion, training and development is the positive sides. Transfer, promotion, training and development. Termination and layoff, the negative sides of the sub-functions of staffing. So as you see, this about the management of human resources, planning and management of human resources. The first function of management is directing. How to direct people or human resources. Directing is the function of leading the employees, to guide them in order to perform efficiently and contribute their optimum, the ideal effort to the achievement of organizational objectives. It's about what? About leading whom? To lead the employees. What for? To perform efficiently first and contribute the optimum to give their optimal effort to the achievement of organizational objectives. Jobs assigned to subordinates have to be explained and clarified. Jobs must be clear, implicit, known, identified. This is very productive job. Job must be identified, defined, identified, clarified. This is a positive job. They have to be provided guidance in job performance, and they are to be motivated to contribute their optimum performance with zeal and enthusiasm. The function of directing as above mentioned function has its sub-functions. Actually, the sub-functions are breakdown of the main functions. Actually, we can define directing through its sub-functions. But let us restrict it with the definition of the function of directing a function of leading the employees, to guide the employees, to give an efficiently effort, optimal effort, an ideal effort. Based on the definition and meaning of the function of directing. The sub-function of directing are three. These three functions are very suitable to the objectives of the function of directing. This is communication, motivation, and leadership. Remember, there are three sub-functions of directing: communication, motivation, and leadership. Coordinating. Coordinating the function of establishing such relationship among various parts of the organization that they all together pull in the direction of organizational objectives. So, to coordinate the interrelationship between various entities of organization. Of course, the final goal is to implement the objectives of the organization. So, based on that, it is thus the process of tying together all the organizational decisions, operations, activities, and efforts so as to achieve unity of action of the accomplishment of organizational objectives. So, actually, the coordinating function is the link between various parts of the organization. Coordinating is the function of establishing a relationships between various entities of the organization. So, the aim of establishing such relationships is to pull in the direction of organizational achievement. It is thus the process of tying, correlating, integrating actually together all the organizational decisions, operations, activities, and effort. So, let's make stress on the following: decisions is about the formulations of objectives and plans. Operation, the process of implementation of those objectives through various parts or departments. Activities, as you know, the function The identification of activities is a function of organizing and effort of human resources, etc. The goal of this integration or cooperation or correlation of actions is the accomplishment of organizational objectives. Accomplishment of organizational objective. The importance or the significance of the coordinating process has been aptly highlighted by Mary Parker. The manager, in his or her view, should ensure that he has an organization with all its parts coordinated, so moving together in their closely knit and adjusting activities, so linking, interlocking and interrelationship, that they make a working unit which is not a congress of separate pieces, but that I have called a functional whole of integrative unity. This definition of coordination given by Mary Parker. So, some complexity in this definition. Coordination as a management function involves the following sub-function. Cause, coordinating as all other function has its sub-functions. Let's take a look at sub-functions of coordinating. There are 5 functions of coordinating. Clear definition of authority responsibility relationship between. This is very significant. To define clearly the authority inter-responsibility relationship. So, to define the relationship of responsibilities between various entities of the organization. This is main. Centralized actually. Unity of direction. Unity of direction. Unity of command. Effective communication. Effective communication. effective leadership. Effective leadership. This actually subfunction serves the function of coordinating. Clear definition of authority responsibility relationship, unity of direction, unity of command, effective communication, and effective leadership. Remember, the multi-choice exam. Controlling is the function of ensuring that the divisional, departmental, sectional, and individual performances are consistent with the predetermined objectives and goals. Controlling is a function of emphasizing that the divisional, departmental, sectional, and individual performances are consistent with predetermined objectives and goals. It's about the follow-up, evaluation, and assessment. See? In order not to deviate from a predetermined objectives. Why? It does that. Deviation from objectives and plans have to be identified and investigated, and correction action taken. Management of change. Deviation from objectives put into account. Deviation or from objectives and plans have to be identified and investigated a priori in order to take a correction action. Correction action. Deviations from plans and objectives provide feedback to managers and all other management processes, including planning, organizing, staffing, directing, and coordinating are continuously reviewed and modified where necessary. So the follow-up of the efficiency and effectiveness of other functions of production, how they are doing well or wrong, to adjust the error, to correct the error. Controlling implies that objectives, goals, and standards of performance exist and are known to employees and their superiors. It also implies a flexible and dynamic, not static, dynamic organization which will permit change in objectives, plans, programs, strategies, policies, organizational design, staffing policies and practices, leadership style, communication system, etc. عشان ما انا قاعد اسجل.
ها؟ يعني الواحد ما يشتغل؟
اشتغل. It is not uncommon that employees fail to achieve predetermined standard is due to defects of shortcomings in any one or more of the above dimensions of management. So here I would like to clarify that the main objective of controlling is to emphasize that the deviation from the objective and plans have to be identified a priori and investigated in order to take a correction action. This is the main. Controlling assumes that the various functions of management should be worked correctly, efficiently, and accurately. Controlling implies that objectives must be reviewed and modified where necessary. Goals and standards of performance exist and are known to employees and their superiors. This is the main of the function of controlling. Involves the following process: measurement of performance against predetermined goals, identification of deviations from these goals, corrective action to rectify deviation, to remedy actually deviation. So this is the last paragraph of our functions of management. The sub-functions of controlling are measurement, evaluation of performance against versus predetermined goals and objectives, identification of deviation from these goals, and respectively to correct or to remedy the deviation from these goals. The end of the chapter of the functions of management.